Imagine for a moment that someone tries to push you, guilt-trip you, or quietly reshape your decisions without ever saying it outright. The kind of emotional pressure that once made you shrink, apologize, or surrender just to keep the peace. But now, instead of explaining yourself endlessly or bending to discomfort, you stand in a different posture. You respond with clarity, not anger. Firmness, not fear. You no longer feel the need to justify why you think, feel, or choose differently. You simply take ownership of your inner ground. This shift doesn't make you colder, it makes you sovereign. It pulls your mind back into your own hands. And in a world where many try to manipulate through subtlety, silence, tone, or expectation, reclaiming your inner authority becomes an act of quiet revolution. Stoic philosophy was not created for calm times or perfectly balanced relationships. It was forged in the middle of chaos, politics, conflict, and human unpredictability. That's why its principles remain so powerful today. The goal is not to win every argument or disarm every manipulator with clever lines, but to develop the kind of internal strength that makes manipulation ineffective in the first place. In this video, you will learn 7 Stoic-inspired responses that protect your emotional boundaries, sharpen your clarity, and remind you that your mind is not a battlefield for other people's anxieties, desires, or distortions. These responses don't attack, don't provoke, don't escalate. They simply anchor you in truth, your truth, so that no one can pull you into a psychological storm you never agreed to enter. First phrase, I hear you, but I won't move away from what I know is right for me. This is the kind of sentence that looks simple on the surface but completely changes the dynamic of a conversation. Manipulators often rely on one central tactic, convincing you that your judgment is flawed. They want you to feel unsure, guilty, or morally mistaken so they can redirect your choices toward what benefits them. When you begin with, I hear you, you disarm their first strategy. You show that you are not shutting down the conversation, not invalidating them, not acting out of anger. You are showing presence. This alone cuts off accusations like, you never listen, or you don't care about my side. You remove their ability to portray you as unreasonable. It is a psychological reset that protects you from being framed as the problem. But the real power comes in the second half of the sentence. But I won't move away from what I know is right for me. This is where the Stoic backbone emerges. You affirm that your choices are not up for negotiation simply because someone wants you to doubt them. Stoics believe that a person's judgment, when rooted in reason and integrity, must remain independent of external pressure. You are not responsible for molding your decisions to someone else's comfort. You are responsible for choosing what aligns with your values. And a manipulator hates this clarity. They prefer you confused, conflicted, emotionally tangled. They prefer you to feel that wanting something different is a betrayal. But when you calmly state that you won't abandon what you know is right, the emotional hooks lose their strength. A sentence like this works because it does not attack. It doesn't attempt to convince the other person of anything. It simply asserts your position as non-negotiable. And when someone realizes that emotional pressure, guilt, sarcasm, or dramatization won't move you, their manipulative patterns start to crumble. You are no longer reacting from fear or urgency. You're responding from conviction. There is a difference. One is unstable, and manipulators rely on that instability. The other is immovable, and that immobility exposes their tactics. When they try to twist the narrative, so you think I'm wrong, or, wow, you've really changed, you no longer fall into the trap of defending yourself. You no longer need to justify why you choose what is aligned with your own path. Your mind returns to you. This phrase also serves a deeper internal purpose. It reminds you that you are allowed to choose yourself without apology. Many people spend years betraying their own intuition just to keep relationships calm, sacrificing their well-being to avoid disappointing someone. But self-betrayal is a slow erosion. You don't feel it all at once, only over time, when pieces of your identity begin to disappear. Stoicism teaches the opposite, to live with integrity, not convenience. To choose what is right, not what is easier. To remain steady, even when that steadiness challenges the expectations of others. When you say this phrase, you honor that principle. And here is the most transformative part. The moment you stop abandoning yourself, manipulative people stop having access to the buttons they used to press. They can push, but nothing moves. They can dramatize, but nothing shakes. They can guilt trip, but nothing penetrates. Because you have returned to the most powerful place a person can stand. The place where you know what is right for you, and you no longer let anyone drag you away from it. That is the beginning of emotional freedom. Second phrase, I understand how you see it, but I won't carry what isn't mine. This phrase is a shield, not made of aggression, but of clarity. Manipulators thrive when responsibility becomes blurry. They subtly shift weight onto your shoulders through disappointed tones, indirect comments, or emotional stories that imply you somehow caused their discomfort. They weaponize guilt in small doses, hoping you won't notice the pattern. When you say, I understand how you see it, you show maturity. You're not rejecting their perspective. You're not arguing. You're not escalating. You're acknowledging their viewpoint, which instantly softens the terrain and removes their ability to claim you're being unreasonable or closed off. But the second part, but I won't carry what isn't mine, is where everything changes. This is a declaration of emotional boundaries. It exposes a truth many people avoid. Not every reaction, expectation, disappointment, or problem belongs to you. Manipulators rely on your tendency to over-explain, over-apologize, or over-correct. They rely on your kindness being turned against you. When you say, calmly and without bitterness, that you won't carry what doesn't belong to you, you close the door to emotional displacement. You refuse to absorb feelings that someone else is responsible for managing. This phrase highlights a core Stoic principle. Control and responsibility go hand in hand. If you didn't choose it, if you didn't cause it, if you didn't participate in creating it, then you are not responsible for repairing it. When manipulators sense they can no longer offload their emotional burdens onto you, their tactics weaken. They may try comments like, I thought I could count on you, or, you've really changed, hoping you'll rush to relieve their discomfort. But you no longer fall into that trap. Your steadiness frustrates manipulation because it turns a one-way dynamic into a boundary. And boundaries are kryptonite to anyone who benefits from your confusion. The beauty of this phrase is that it also wakes up something inside you. The realization that your empathy should never turn into self-neglect. Helping others is noble. Carrying what doesn't belong to you is self-sabotage. And the moment you internalize that difference, you start treating your emotional energy like something valuable. Something that should not be wasted on guilt that was never yours to begin with. Third phrase, I can support you, but I won't sacrifice myself to fix what you avoid. This sentence is a direct message to relationships where you end up doing the emotional heavy lifting. Manipulators often present themselves as overwhelmed, helpless, or misunderstood, all as a way to make you feel obligated to step in. They count on you being the responsible one, the emotionally stable one, the problem solver. The phrase, I can support you, acknowledges compassion. It shows openness. It shows that you're not abandoning the person or dismissing their struggle. And that's exactly why this phrase is so effective. It removes the storyline that you are the cold or distant one. But the second half, but I won't sacrifice myself to fix what you avoid, draws a line that manipulators hate. Because they depend on your willingness to overextend yourself. They need you to prioritize their urgency over your well-being. They need you to feel guilty for choosing yourself. When you calmly assert that you won't self-destruct to solve problems someone refuses to confront, you dismantle the dynamic completely. This phrase exposes a truth manipulators never admit. Many of their emergencies only exist because they refuse to take responsibility. They deflect, procrastinate, dramatize, or blame circumstances. And when you repeatedly rescue them, you unintentionally reinforce their avoidance. Stoicism teaches that each person must engage with their own challenges, because growth comes from facing difficulties, not outsourcing them. Manipulators fear this phrase because it forces a shift from dependency to accountability. They might respond with emotional pressure, I thought you cared, no one helps me, you're leaving me alone in this. But these reactions aren't actually about the problem. They're about losing access to your effort, your time, your emotional labor. When you refuse to sacrifice yourself, you aren't being cruel. You're being honest about what is sustainable. This phrase also protects you from one of the most draining patterns in relationships. The cycle of saving someone who has no intention of changing. It pulls you out of the role of emotional firefighter and places you back in the position of an equal, not a substitute for someone's responsibility. As you practice saying it, you become more aware of when you're helping out of genuine care and when you're helping out of fear, guilt, or obligation. And that awareness is transformative. When you use this phrase consistently, people around you begin to reveal their true nature. Those who value mutual respect will adapt, take responsibility, and meet you at the same level. Those who only valued your compliance will distance themselves. And that, in itself, is clarity. If these phrases are opening your eyes and helping you reclaim your emotional space, then let this be your moment of commitment. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to break free from manipulation too. Your engagement isn't just support. It's a declaration that you're choosing growth over guilt and clarity over confusion. Fourth phrase, I'm willing to talk, but not in a tone that disrespects me. There are moments when a conversation stops being a conversation and becomes a battlefield. The subject disappears, replaced by harsh tones, raised voices, sarcastic remarks, or passive-aggressive jabs designed not to communicate but to destabilize you. Manipulators often weaponize tone because tone doesn't need logic, it only needs reaction. If they can provoke you emotionally, they gain control of the situation. They want you flustered, defensive, or apologetic. They want the argument to shift from the issue at hand to the way you reacted. It's one of the oldest and most effective psychological traps. That is why saying, I'm willing to talk, but not in a tone that disrespects me, changes everything. It reframes the interaction without adding fuel to the fire. You aren't accusing the other person of being angry or toxic. You're not labeling them. You're not escalating. You're simply stating a condition for communication, the most basic one, respect. When you do this, you remove the manipulator's ability to control the pace and emotional temperature of the interaction. You put the boundary not on the topic, but on the delivery. And this resets the balance of power. Most manipulators expect you to match their intensity. They want you to slip, to say something out of frustration, to give them emotional ammunition they can later use against you. When you refuse to engage at that level, their strategy collapses. They may mock you, "Oh, so now you're above everyone," or "Look at you acting all perfect." But these comments are simply attempts to pull you back into their terrain. As soon as you stay calm, the cycle breaks. You demonstrate emotional discipline, and discipline is something manipulators can't exploit. The beauty of this phrase is in its neutrality. You're not threatening to leave the conversation forever. You're simply stepping away until respect returns. Stoicism teaches that self-control is the highest form of strength, and that stepping back is often more powerful than fighting back. When you remove yourself from disrespectful tone, you're signaling that your emotional space is not a public playground. You are protecting your internal balance. And an interesting transformation begins to happen once you make this a habit. People either adjust their tone or reveal their unwillingness to engage in a healthy interaction. Those who genuinely want dialogue will soften, slow down, and speak differently. Those who depended on chaos to gain control will become frustrated because their primary tactic no longer works. And you will find yourself, slowly, stepping into a version of yourself that is both firm and peaceful. Someone who chooses serenity without sacrificing strength. Fifth phrase, I recognize your view, but I won't abandon my inner truth to satisfy your expectations. One of the most subtle forms of manipulation is the attempt to reshape your beliefs, values, or perceptions to fit someone else's narrative. Instead of overt pressure, the manipulator questions your judgment in small, consistent ways. They make you feel that your perspective is naive, your boundaries exaggerated, your feelings irrational, your needs inconvenient. Over time, these micro-attacks can make a person disconnect from their own intuition. It's a slow erosion of self-trust. This is why the phrase, I recognize your view, matters so profoundly. It acknowledges the other person's perspective without absorbing it. It shows maturity, empathy, and openness. It removes the manipulator's favorite accusation, you never listen, because you did listen. You simply refuse to surrender your identity to their interpretation. Acknowledgement is not agreement, and understanding is not submission. This distinction is where your freedom begins. The second part, but I won't abandon my inner truth to satisfy your expectations, is where Stoicism becomes action. Manipulators want you to doubt your truth because doubt makes you malleable. If they can convince you that your own feelings or perceptions are unreliable, they can shape your behavior however they want. But when you explicitly state that you won't abandon what you know inside yourself, the manipulator loses their psychological leverage. This phrase forces the conversation out of emotional fog and into clarity. You're not arguing whose truth is superior. You're not trying to win a debate. You're not defending your character. You're simply stating that your inner truth is non-negotiable. Stoics taught that living according to your nature and convictions is the foundation of integrity. When you abandon your truth to please someone else, you don't gain harmony. You lose yourself. Expect resistance. Manipulators may claim you're stubborn, insensitive, or self-centered. They might say things like, "You've changed," or "I guess your truth is the only one that matters." These comments are not reflections of reality. They're attempts to pull you back into compliance. But the moment you stop bending yourself to fit someone else's expectations, something powerful happens. You become grounded. You become difficult to sway. You become someone who responds from alignment rather than fear. This phrase also becomes an anchor inside your own mind. It reminds you that it's acceptable to listen and still disagree. Acceptable to care and still hold boundaries. Acceptable to act from your truth even when it disappoints someone. When you practice this, your self-respect deepens. Your clarity sharpens. And gradually, you build the internal solidity that makes manipulation completely ineffective. Because no one can twist the mind of someone who trusts their own truth. Sixth phrase, I respect your feelings, but I won't let them dictate my decisions. One of the most common tools manipulators use is emotional influence. They don't always need to raise their voice or twist your words. Sometimes all they need is a sigh, a disappointed expression, a subtle withdrawal of affection, or a reminder of how your choices make them feel. They rely on your empathy, not your weakness. They know you care, so they press into that care to steer your behavior. It's a soft kind of pressure, quiet enough to be justified, but heavy enough to shape your choices. That's why this phrase is so powerful. When you say, I respect your feelings, you acknowledge the other person's emotional reality with genuine maturity. You're not dismissing them. You're not denying their experience. You're not minimizing their inner world. In fact, this opening creates a sense of emotional safety because it shows you're not indifferent. But the second half of the sentence draws a clear and necessary line. But I won't let them dictate my decisions. This is the moment where manipulation loses its grip. You're establishing that empathy is not obedience, that understanding is not surrender, and that compassion is not consent. Stoicism teaches that feelings, yours or someone else's, can inform your choices but should never control them. Manipulators depend on your instinct to prevent others from feeling hurt, disappointed, or upset. The moment you separate your decisions from their emotions, you take back your autonomy. Of course, emotional manipulators often react strongly to this boundary. They might say, "So my feelings don't matter," or "I guess you don't care anymore." But these statements aren't genuine reflections of hurt. They're strategic appeals to regain influence. Your calm, steady posture breaks the expectation that emotions can be used to steer your life. You're essentially saying, I see you, I hear you, but I also see myself, and I won't betray that. And here's the quiet transformation that begins inside you when you start using this phrase. You stop making decisions through fear. Fear of upsetting someone. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of conflict. You begin making decisions through purpose. Through clarity. Through alignment with your values. Your judgment becomes clean. Your choices become intentional. And slowly, the emotional fog clears. When your decisions stop orbiting around someone else's emotional reactions, manipulators lose their primary method of influence. They can feel upset, disappointed, or frustrated, but those emotions no longer dictate your path. You finally begin living from the inside outward, not the outside inward. Seventh phrase, I can stay, but not in a space where my boundaries aren't honored. Every relationship, romantic, familial, professional, or social, depends on one silent agreement, that each person's boundaries will be respected. Manipulators, however, operate through erosion. They don't always cross your boundaries openly. Instead, they test them. They push little by little. They wait to see if you notice, if you resist, or if you surrender. Each small intrusion becomes a foundation for a larger one. That's why the phrase, "I can stay," is a subtle yet incredibly powerful opening. It communicates willingness, not withdrawal. It shows that you're not running away, shutting down, or abandoning the relationship. You're open to connection. You're open to conversation. But you're also aware. You're present. And then comes the line that reshapes the dynamic entirely. But not in a space where my boundaries aren't honored. This sentence draws a clear map of what is acceptable and what is not. You're not demanding that someone change who they are. You're not threatening them. You're simply stating the conditions under which your presence can remain healthy. Stoicism teaches that staying in a harmful environment is a form of self-abandonment. You cannot flourish where your boundaries are treated as inconveniences. You cannot grow in a space where your no is negotiable. You cannot evolve in a place where your limits are ignored. Manipulators dislike this phrase because it exposes their strategy. They rely on ambiguity. If the boundaries are unclear, they have room to operate. But once you explicitly state that your presence requires respect, they can no longer pretend they didn't realize. Suddenly, the spotlight is on their actions, not your reactions. Expect them to challenge you with lines like, "Your boundaries are too much," or "So now everything has to be your way." These are not reflections of reality. They are attempts to shame you out of protecting yourself. But when you calmly hold your position, you send a message. You can stay in my life, but only in a version of it where respect is real, not convenient. This phrase protects you in another subtle way. It shifts your focus from trying to fix people to observing whether they're capable of meeting you where you are. Not everyone can, and that's okay. When you set this standard, relationships become clearer. Some will rise to match your boundaries because they value connection. Others will pull away because they value control. Either outcome gives you truth. And in the Stoic worldview, truth is always a gift. What grows inside you when you use this phrase consistently is a deep sense of self-worth. You no longer cling to relationships out of fear of losing them. You choose relationships that honor your existence. You stop begging for respect and start expecting it. And the moment you expect respect as a non-negotiable, manipulation loses its oxygen. You become someone who stays, yes, but never at the cost of yourself. Reaching this final part, something important becomes clear. The real transformation does not happen when you memorize these 7 phrases, but when you finally recognize why you needed them. The truth is that many people spend years adjusting themselves to fit expectations, smoothing their own edges to keep the peace, or shrinking their voice to be easier to love. Some learn to anticipate others' reactions before they even consider their own. Some learn to read every room except the one inside themselves. And after enough time, they forget where their boundaries end and where someone else's demands begin. Stoicism reminds us that you were never meant to live like that. You were not designed to shapeshift in response to pressure, or to carry the emotional weight that others refuse to manage. You were not meant to silence your instincts or abandon your inner truth for the sake of preserving connections that only exist when you disappear a little. You were meant to walk through the world with a steady mind, a grounded heart, and a loyalty to your values that does not change just because someone raises their voice or withdraws affection. That is what these 7 phrases protect. The part of you that remembers who you are. Every sentence you learned here is more than a response. It is a declaration. A declaration that your presence is not up for negotiation. A declaration that your truth is not a bargaining chip. A declaration that your emotional energy is not a resource to be exploited. That you can understand others without absorbing their chaos. That you can care without surrendering your direction. That you can listen without losing yourself. And once this becomes part of how you speak, it becomes part of how you stand. You begin to notice things that used to slip past you. The way someone subtly tries to make you feel responsible for their reactions. The way they use disappointment as leverage. The way they pretend not to understand your boundary the first time, hoping you will abandon it by the third. The way their concern is only active when your decisions stop benefiting them. But something has changed now. You no longer bend automatically. You no longer rush to correct your tone, your feelings, or your decisions just to avoid discomfort. You stop treating peace as something that must be purchased at the cost of yourself. This shift is quiet, but powerful. It is a posture. A presence. A new center inside you that doesn't wobble when someone else's expectations clash with your truth. Manipulators lose interest not because you fought harder, but because you stopped playing. You stopped reacting. You stopped offering space for the dynamic to exist. When someone can no longer access your guilt, your confusion, or your insecurity, the entire system collapses. They cannot manipulate a person who stands firmly in themselves. And this inner transformation slowly affects everything around you. Conversations become clearer. Conflicts become shorter. Relationships become more honest. People who value control fade into the background, not with drama, but with inevitability. People who value respect and mutual growth begin to flourish beside you. You start choosing with intention, not fear. You start staying for the right reasons, not the old ones. You stop needing to be understood by everyone, and begin focusing on being true to yourself. This is what it means to live with emotional integrity. To know where you stand and to stay there, even when someone hopes you will move. To understand that you cannot control how others behave, but you always control the space you offer them. To recognize that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the absence of self-betrayal. To see that protecting your mind is not a selfish act, it is a necessary one. And now, with these 7 phrases, you have tools that will stay with you long after this video ends. Tools that will help you navigate difficult conversations without losing your center. Tools that will remind you that your boundaries are valid. Tools that will anchor you when someone tries to twist your words or rewrite your reality. Tools that allow you to be gentle without being submissive, assertive without being harsh, compassionate without being controlled. Tools that help you walk through the world with a quiet confidence that cannot be manipulated. Before we close, take a moment to acknowledge something. If you made it to the end, it's because a part of you already knew you needed this. A part of you is tired of abandoning yourself. A part of you is ready to stop repeating old stories. A part of you wants clarity more than approval. And that part of you is growing, strengthening, unfolding. Let it grow. Let it lead. Now ask yourself, which phrase do you need to use today? Which boundary have you allowed others to cross for too long? Which part of you is ready to be reclaimed? Because this journey doesn't end here. It begins now, when you decide that your mind, your peace, and your inner truth are no longer available for negotiation. If this message resonated with you, make it known. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment saying, "I choose my peace." Your words aren't just engagement, they're a declaration of who you are becoming.